Hello, hello! I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. Today, I'm concluding my 3-part series on improving scenes by discussing how to finish them. I do want to take a slight detour to distinguish between scenes and chapters, as the definitions I've found for these have been fairly fluid. Now, from what I've seen, a chapter is a means to distinguish specific points within a story, whereas a scene accomplishes multiple goals as it progresses. One scene can be contained within a single chapter, though multiple scenes could also exist within that same chapter. Usually a scene will end at a chapter break, and if the next chapter picks up where the last one left off, then that means they might be transitioning to a new location or the next scene is starting. To justify the chapter break, there may be a drastic change or a shift in point of view. For example, the characters may end the chapter in one location, and the new chapter picks up as they race to the next location. Or the villain has made a grand entrance and the same long scene continues in a new chapter with the heroes reacting. Scenes have a lot in common with running workouts. Some go on for far too long, some end abruptly, and some end at exactly the right place. Now it's that last one that I'm focusing on here. On my runs, reaching the top of a steep hill almost never means that I'm done. In a similar way with writing, creating the highest moment of tension within a scene should almost never lead to an abrupt end of said scene. That will most likely diffuse all those built up emotions, ruining your hard work when jumping to the next scene. Also, runs shouldn't end with no strains and easy breathing. Similarly, the scene shouldn't end with all conflicts being resolved, unless it's at the end of a novel. After all, if this is a happily ever after moment with no potential hints of conflict, then why continue reading? Although ending a scene with a character falling asleep or passing out makes sense, it's a trope I'd like to see used less. Now, I will be the first to admit that I am absolutely guilty of this one, as I think a quarter, if not a third of the scenes I write involve somebody going to bed or outright collapsing in exhaustion. It fits within my stories, particularly during training and fight scenes, though it's a trick I overuse and actively strive to remove. So how do you write a satisfying mini conclusion for a scene so that it leads into the next? Here are my 5 tips to end a scene so that readers remain hooked. Number 1, surprise. The best way to keep me hooked is by ending a scene with a surprise. Now these do need to be both relevant and believable. Scene endings which include a Deus Ex Machina or make me shout out loud, huh? Are the same ones that make me decide to put the book down and come back to it another day. One type of surprise could be somebody digging a deep hole and having their shovel hit against a treasure chest. Or more morbidly, a coffin. Alternatively, a surprise ending could be the child of a wizard and witch with no powers of their own could be thrown into a life or death situation where they discover explosively that they had magic powers all along. Surprises can be an all-new discovery, an old friend's return, or an outside force causing a significant emotional change in a hero. Number 2, Epiphany. The events of the scene have led to the character having a major revelation. Maybe they hit rock bottom and the scene ends with them resolving to be better. That alone makes me, the reader, ask several questions which I want answered, such as, how will they turn their life around? And will they succeed? To a lesser extent, this type of scene ending could be the character making a decision. It doesn't need to be something life-shattering, but could be something as simple as deciding to call in sick for work so they can take a day trip into the city. Number 3, all new challenge. Much like in the last episode where I discussed raising tension steadily across a scene by adding in progressively greater roadblocks, a scene could end by throwing in an insurmountable obstacle in front of the heroes. Having spent the entire scene climbing the dangerous side of a cliff, the heroes reach a plateau. Then the clouds shift and they realize that they are less than halfway up the mountain. Number 4, fallout. Like within a story's plot, the conflict raised within the scene should be relatively self-contained and resolved on or near its final moments. However, for this method, there will be clear ramifications for everyone involved, which will need to be addressed in subsequent scenes. For example, the characters could save a bunch of hostages, but they had to break numerous laws to do so. The scene could end with a brief moment of calm as the heroes await for the police to arrive and arrest them. And lastly, number 5, cliffhangers. While I don't like ending a novel on a cliffhanger, ending a scene on a cliffhanger is a highly effective strategy to create a page turner. Use this sparingly and it works every time, especially if the scene shifts to a different point of view, which is equally as interesting. We have followed our heroes as they snuck into the castle, taking great pains to move as quietly as possible. And one misstep alerts the guards. Now 40 armed soldiers are rushing at the heroes, and the scene ends. I turn the page expecting to continue in that suspenseful moment, only to jump to a different character who is acting as the alibi for the heroes during the winter ball. This new scene has its own tense moments and rewards. I need to know what happens to both plot threads, and now the sun is rising. Looks like I spent another all-nighter reading, but it was well worth it. Those are my 5 tips to ending scenes in a way to keep readers reading. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. Let me know in those comments about the most creative way you've ended a scene. Do you agree with my opinions, or is everything I said wrong? I post my running and writing progress on social media, so be sure to follow along and join in with your own thoughts. See you next time. Until then, finish your scenes so that readers can't wait to turn the page.